This is the second part of our series of messages entitled Thanksgiving. In this particular message, we want to try and look at the story of a man called Naaman. And as we look at the story of a man called Naaman, what we want to suggest is that our thanksgiving to God is reflected often by our walking in faith, walking in trust of the God who has blessed us in amazing ways. Let me very quickly tell you the story of Naaman. And if you've never read it, I'd like to encourage you to read the story from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 to 19. Naaman is the commander of Aram. He's a very powerful warrior. And yet the Bible says this man suddenly contracts leprosy. When he contracted leprosy, everything changed in his life. All of a sudden, this man's life is thrown into disarray. He doesn't know what to do. And I'm sure he's gone to the best of the best, and yet he finds no healing for his problem. God in his providence brings a slave girl to work in the house of this man called Naaman. And this slave girl speaks to Naaman's wife and says to Naaman's wife, if only my master would go down to the prophet in Israel, to the true God, this man would be healed of his leprosy. When Naaman hears this particular testimony, he's desperate for healing. He goes down to the king of Aram, takes a letter from him, goes down to the king of Israel, finally finds himself in the door of the prophet Elisha. And as he knocks the door of the prophet Elisha, he's knocking that door with the hope of healing. The prophet Elisha sends a messenger to Naaman, go dip in the Jordan 7 times, you will be made well. Naaman is angry. Naaman is angry because why didn't the prophet come out to see me? Why is he asking me to take a dip in the Jordan? Aren't the rivers of Aram better than the Jordan? He's angry. It's almost going to go away. When the Bible says a group of servants rally around Naaman and say, please Naaman, if the prophet had asked you to do something great, wouldn't you have done it? All he's asking you is to go and take a dip in the Jordan. Would you please do that? Naaman goes down to the Jordan, dips in the Jordan 7 times. The Bible says when he comes out, his skin is like the skin of a young boy. He is so excited. He comes back to the prophet and he says to the prophet Elisha, I now have encountered the true God. And having encountered the true God, here is my promise to you. For the rest of my life, it is Him and Him alone that I would serve. From that story, there are many lessons that we can learn, but I want to very quickly highlight 5 lessons that Naaman possibly learned at the end of that particular life experience. Number 1, he learned that it is only in God that I can find true security. Naaman was a man that was powerful. He was a man that was popular. He was a man that had possessions. And yet one day, when he contracted leprosy, he realized that all of those meant nothing to him. His popularity, his power, his possessions couldn't carry him through. He suddenly realized that, I've been placing my security in all of this. But in a moment I realized that these things are not able to carry me through in life. What an important reminder for all of us. So many of us, we place our security in our friends, in our workplaces, in our bank balances, in our health. But maybe be reminded from the story of Naaman that in 1 minute, all of that can change. And maybe begin to ask ourselves, where will I find true security? The second lesson that Naaman learned was that God is able to use simple people to bring blessing in our life. Who was Naaman? He was a commander. Here was a guy who could meet governors, ministers, kings. He was a man that could meet people in authority. But whom was God using to help him? A captive girl and a bunch of servants. How amazing is that? And for those of us who feel that I'm too ordinary, I don't think there's anything good I can do, I want to tell you, God is able to use ordinary people in special ways. But for all of us, what an important reminder. So often in our journey of life, we think it's the rich, we think it's the powerful, we think it's those that are in positions that can help us through in our journey of faith. And yet the Bible reminds us, God picks up simple people to bring help into our life. The third lesson that we learned from Naaman's life is that sometimes, our confidence in ourselves, our own self-confidence, that arrogant self-confidence, sometimes brings us to that place where we can miss out on the greatest blessings that God has in store for us. Here was Naaman. The prophet said, go dip in the Jordan, you'll be made well. He's angry. Why didn't the prophet come out to see me? Why is he asking me to do this? Aren't the rivers of Aram any better? I don't want to do this. I'm going to go away. Stop and think about it. If the story of Naaman had ended there, what a sad story it would have been. A man who was arrogant and therefore missed out on the great blessings of God. And as you look at Naaman's life, that's one of the lessons that Naaman realized. That God, I can't be confident in myself. I need to place my confidence in you. The fourth lesson that we learn from the life of Naaman is that Naaman, as he finally looked back on his life, sees the sovereignty of God. Isn't it interesting that the Bible says that even the victories of Naaman were because of the Lord, his God. You recognize that even before Naaman ever found the true God was working in his life. God is sovereign. God brought that slave girl to Naaman's house. God used the servants to speak into Naaman's life. God used so many things in Naaman's life. God used the prophet to send word to the king saying, send him to me. God was sovereign in the life of Naaman. And so as you look at the life of Naaman, as Naaman experiences all of these incredible blessings of God, it brings us to the last thought that we want to think about from Naaman's life, which is Naaman's surrender to God. Having experienced the blessings of God. Naaman comes back to the prophet and says, there is no God like this one true God. And Naaman says, now that I have found him, now that I have experienced him, for the rest of my life, I'm going to walk faithful to him. Now in our life of Thanksgiving, in the season of Thanksgiving, let's think of that. Now that I have found the true God, now that I've experienced him deeply, for the rest of my life, it is him and him only will I serve. My offering of thanksgiving is an offering of faith. God, I will trust you and you alone. You are worthy of being trusted. I will trust you as I journey through the rest of my life. I pray that the story of Naaman will be a blessing to you. That you, as you meditate on this story, would be encouraged that in your thanksgiving to God, you would walk true to the God who has blessed you in so many wonderful ways. To him be the praise, to him be the glory. Amen.